version of our podcast. We have a couple new guests that we haven't seen yet on our podcast. One of them being Kaylee Jenkins.
Hello.
One of our athletic trainers at our Westfield clinic, which we're recording out of right now. And we're excited to talk to you today about work conditioning, work capacity, other topics that revolve around just work readiness. We get those questions a lot about how do you know when they're ready to return to work, especially if they've been off work for quite a while. And I know that all of our first responders have a little bit of apprehension returning to work when they have a very dynamic job. Mike, who we've seen on our podcast before, is our performance specialist, and I'm going to let him kind of kick us off with the discussion about programming work conditioning, since we consult him for all of our programming preparation. Kaylee and I have used him a bunch for our own patients, and he's the expert in the area for our consult. So what are your thoughts on?
Well, from a performance standpoint, work conditioning is very different from a standard programming because they're coming off injury. So you guys have obviously worked with me on that kind of stuff where you guys have come in with what they did before, and we've had the program differently based on that stuff. So the traditional strength coach is working with a healthy athlete most of the time. And then when you have the injured athlete coming in, it changes things. So we've had to do some like athletic profiling of like the person we're working with. So where they came from, where their goals are, where we want them to be. And I think that's the difference between the standard performance side of it. A lot of the kind of the buzzwords right now, performance is KPIs, like what are the key performance indicators? And we do a lot of carry tests. There's some different things you guys do in the clinics with regard to the strength and repetitions they have to do. So it's a little different, and it's something that not a lot of people go through, but with the tactical athlete, we go through that all the time. So it's definitely different for sure.
Yeah, and so I'm sure people that listen to this podcast might come from a place where they were injured and they want to get back to work, and maybe it's not work related, so they don't have that resource and they kind of have to figure it out for themselves. So that's going to look a lot different than someone who's just trying to improve their overall performance. So do those KPIs look different for those people?
To a certain degree, yes. I think Kaylee can answer this also, is that when a healthy athlete's going through a program, they are going through strength movements, they're going through vertical jumps, they're going through all the performance testing. But someone coming off the rehab side is going to have to do other things. They're going to have breathing things they're worrying about, or it's scaled back when they're coming off the injury. So I think that's the difference, where if I'm not injured, I'm not going to be worrying about little things that have to do with someone getting injured. So I'm worried about bigger things because I'm past that point. So I think that's the big difference between the two. That's a very vague answer. It's very broad, but it all depends on the person. So
yeah, and at ProTeam, we've done both scenarios where we've been asked to just prepare someone to pass a WPE versus the majority of what we see is someone's hurt, and so we have to get them ready to perform their standard return to work. Whatever that might look like, it's different for law enforcement than it is fire. And we get that experience up here. I work only in police now, so that's very different than working with the fire side or even medics. And I'd say your experience with just the different approach with their own capacity, like even just where they were before they got hurt, they might not have been the top performer anyway. So how do you pivot in the moment?
It's really hard. Like I work with both fire and police and correctional facilities. Most of them would, like, when I have someone who was 2 weeks before he was about to do recruitment and he got injured. So we're trying to get him back for recruitment school. So that's a whole nother high level of activity, not just getting back into work. I've also had seasoned firefighters or police officers where they were been on the job for 25 plus years and they got injured and they only have 5 more years left till retirement, and now we have to get them back so they can do the WP and be ready, especially being off for like 8 or 9 months. So really hard. You know, there's a physical taxing of being immobilized for so long and then not being, you know, working out, and then how much working out did they do prior to that? Because you can kind of, especially on your different position that you're in, you could, you know, if you're more driving the ladder, or you're more on the medic, you just have to do the WPE each year.
Yeah, I found that consulting someone in the realm of understanding their functional capacity is important. Like people who just kind of jump into physical training without a plan. We see that all the time. So this is like the scenario where they're never injured. They just want to improve performance. You have to have a plan. And a lot of our folks that at least I encounter, maybe this is law enforcement heavy, they kind of just have do what they've always done and stick to what they know. And so like they don't have that general adaptation over time where they can improve their performance. And so they kind of get stuck and then they get frustrated and then they just stop trying to get better. But then when you have that come back from an injury, most places, whether it's line of duty or not line of duty, are going to just kind of get you back to being a regular civilian and don't understand the capacity of needing to get a tactical individual back to tactical work. And so the general principles, like you mentioned earlier, if someone listening to this wants to know, well, what should I focus my programming in? What are those KPIs?
Yeah, so for the general population, it always starts with an assessment first. Think about education, right? You take a pre-test, you practice, and then you take the real test. It's the same thing with programming, right? So think about movement evaluations. Can you raise your leg up? Can you squat? Can you do the basic things first? And then from a general population, if I'm not going to be a tactical athlete where I have to throw a ladder or I have to climb a fence or whatever it is, my KPIs are, can I do basic cardiovascular work? So can I run a certain distance in a certain amount of time? So can I run the mile? That'd be someone in a general population. If you're someone doing push-ups, can you do 10 push-ups? Like there's different ways to do that from the general population standpoint. But like you said, with a fire and police officer, they have to hit specific standards for their job. I'm not bashing accountants here, but this is my example here. An accountant doesn't have to knock out 20 push-ups for his job or her job. But the firefighter's got to hit a certain amount of push-ups, they have to do a certain amount of pull-ups, they have to be able to run a certain distance, go a certain amount of time. So they're treated like actual professional or collegiate athletes where they have to hit a certain number, otherwise they're not gonna be able to do their job. So that's the main difference, where one is life dependent and one is, hey, I just want to look good for wearing my suit to my job kind of thing. So I think that's the big thing. And the general public's just gonna pick what they feel is best for them,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the difference. But
Well, and I think too, the thought that I have, and I always find a way to put a shameless plug in here to our courses on ProTeam University. Maybe we need a KPI. Like maybe we need to create a course.
well, that KPI conversation, if Carrie ever watches this, Louisville, giving a shout out to Carrie right now.
Yeah.
That he brought that up to me. He was asking what are KPIs. So I threw out a bunch of them. I was like breathing, carry capacity, running, functional movement stuff, whatever it is, and that can spawn something else. So there you go.
Yeah. We're always scheming. But I think that the people that find themselves listening to our podcast might be patients of ours, or it might just be someone who like stumbles upon it. So when we use words like that, I want them to know what we're talking about. And like, then, I asked the big question early and we don't have enough time to talk about programming right now. We do have a course on that too, though, on ProTeam University. If you're interested in more intentional programming and making your general performance better, head over to our page to find that course, because that's another one that Mike facilitated. But just so that people can listen in and understand the key components of when we drop terms like that, or even just kind of understanding the nuances that we understand if someone's like getting ready to go into recruit school, or if someone's 5 years away from retirement and like, I have to do work conditioning, they kind of have that general attitude. Yes, and we're gonna kind of make adjustments because of your general readiness and capacity anyways, because your 21-year-old career firefighter is not gonna look the same as your 60-year-old career firefighter in their work conditioning. But we do have kind of these standard metrics that we've made very objective and valid over time. But I think the point I was trying to make earlier is that we specialize in that. And so like if you go somewhere like a general clinic, they're not really going to they're going to get you accountant ready. They're going to get you back to like civilian baseline versus tactical baseline. So that's why looking at our other courses might be helpful for you, especially for injury prevention and the upper quadrant, lower quadrant ones. We have a free mobility one on there. Mike's got a free warm up one on there. So there's lots of good resources on ProTeam University that can kind of fill gaps in the knowledge of like what we're talking about to applying it to your everyday life. What are some pearls if you're speaking to the clinician aspects? Some things you've learned along the way in your work conditioning experience.
Just because I have a template does not mean we're actually doing the whole template. I have
This
had,
is the plan. Throw it away.
there's been some times I've gone in and it's either been way too easy. I had someone who was like a bodybuilder, workout guru, and like he decided to do everything so much faster just to make it more challenging for him, and I couldn't make it even harder. So our work conditioning was very quick because he would go through it so quickly. So I had to like be more creative the next time and be, okay, I got to make these much more harder. This is way too easy, or it's way too hard. They're not ready for those exercises. And those are kind of hard because it's like they're expecting to be at this level, and then, okay, well, we can't do a squat with a weight yet. You're going to have to go back to the assisted squats until we're ready because you're compromising form or this and that. So sometimes that was one big thing. And I feel like that's with every physical therapy visit and or rehab visit, you have to kind of tailor it to what the patient's ready for. But I think having fun with it, that was something like a lot of people, when you find out you have to do work conditioning, it's kind of a downer. And I think a good thing we do at ProTeam is we make it fun. Okay, yes, it's gonna be 2 hours, but it's gonna be like you're working out in a gym. Like we're gonna be really working on it. I've showed the strength and conditioning coach. He's aware of it. Someone's seen my plan. It's not my plan. It's like been developed. So and I think a lot of people, especially when they've been off, they're very motivated. It's like their typical work conditioning, like it's, where they've gone other places, it's been like a little bit more daunting. So I think they're excited to get to that point so they can know that they're going to graduate too.
And I think the point you made about like meeting the person where they're at, because even like, let's say a non-injured person does a course and like learns something new and comes up with a plan, but then they like find out like, man, I'm not hitting these benchmarks, and it makes them want to just like fail and give up anyways. Like it's okay if you're not hitting every benchmark of your own program, even because it's just like not, I don't know, it's not designed that way. I'm not like speaking to it eloquently. Like, could you, from a performance side, like, are you expected to like every workout just hit this mark, hit this mark,
Well,
hit this
we
mark?
had I had this conversation with someone earlier that came in for the DARI assessments or the movement capture, and they were talking about like, how come I didn't improve from last time? I did everything I was supposed to do. And I said, there are other components to this, right? You have nutritional, you have sleep, you have stress, like there's all these different factors that play into it. And add on to what Kaylee said about the program never going the way you expect it to. I don't think I've ever written a program where it's been 100% the same as I wrote it. I've always had to make an adjustment for somebody, whether it's regress the exercise, make it harder, difficult, easier, whatever, add weight. I've had to completely scrap programs before because someone came in that didn't sleep, didn't eat, dehydrated, all that kind of stuff. So you're not expected to hit your benchmarks every day. Like you might think you're going to come in and do a 1 repetition max for 100% of your effort and not hit it because of all those things. So it's not realistic to expect to hit all those every single time. If a coach is telling you that, then they have unrealistic expectations. They don't understand that there are other factors to the physical part of it. So I think having a firefighter or a police officer understand that you're not expected to be perfect every time you come in here, and it's our jobs to make the adjustment. So I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, I've had to learn how to finesse when I realize maybe they're not ready. Like never tell them they're not ready, because then they get really like mental about it. But I think we just thought of another course too, is like assessing your readiness for a killer workout, because I have these conversations all the time with my people too. Like, how much did you sleep last night? What have you put in your body so far for fuel and nutrition today? And I usually scale it 0 to 10, 10 being like, this is your workout day, like go be a Spartan.
Exactly.
And if you're under a 5, maybe you should just do some active recovery. And there are people that are like 2, 3, 4 consistently day after day, and they're like, I'm never going to get a solid workout in. Well, it's not gonna matter anyway, because you're already like garbage in, garbage out. So that's like a whole other topic. of
I feel like with
conversation.
nutrition, I've had to have that conversation so many times, like where someone eats such a heavy breakfast right beforehand. I had a guy come in with a McDonald's bag
Oh, no.
and a Diet Coke.
I'm
like,
like, we're conditioned. Amazing.
I was like, oh, we're gonna take it lighter today. Like,
It's gonna be a rough one. Yeah.
but like actually eating or actually drinking the right things, like even drinking a coffee right before a workout, like let's not do that. Let's try to get up earlier, do it on your drive,
Yeah.
like, not drink an energy drink right beforehand. And because I've had people get sick and it's, like it's not gonna make you feel good when you're doing this workout, especially as we get moving. But I didn't realize I would have to have that conversation with so much, but they're adults. Like I know for my own, I don't really take sometimes the best care. I've done a workout and I didn't eat very well. So it's always sometimes to be helpful to be reminded, a lot of these are parents or grandparents, so they're busy taking care of other people and the general public. So sometimes I kind of forget about, okay, I do need to like eat a better meal. I can't eat fast food the night before or the day of. I need to eat properly, feel it better for a better workout.
Yeah, and there's really good nutrition content on ProTeam University as well. So if you browse the page, there's always new stuff coming out. I think we've even just thought of 2 new courses maybe to develop in the future, but visit the page, browse the different topics. We have behavioral health, injury prevention, performance, and what am I missing? I said nutrition already.
There's a long list that can't
Yeah,
keep track of.
it's the big 4 that we
Yeah.
focus on are all there. There's always new stuff, and we're glad you could tune in with us. Before we go, any parting?
No, if you heard the Kaiser machine back there, that's what we talked about, just being off script. Didn't anticipate that. So
And my
that's
email's chirping.
yeah, there you go. Yep.
Any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, thanks everyone.